Listen, guys, we really need to talk about Kanye West. Recently, he's dropped a brand new documentary about his life. And honestly, it doesn't put him in the best light. In one viral clip, you can actually see him yelling at Kris Jenner, and that moment alone has everyone talking. The internet is buzzing, people are feeling sympathy for the Kardashians, which, let's be real, is not something you usually hear every day. But before we dive into all the reactions, let's break down exactly what this documentary shows and why people are so invested in it. The film, directed by Nico Ballesteros, takes us back in time to Kanye's career beginnings, slowly unraveling the cracks that started appearing in his public image. Right at the start, it highlights one of the earliest turning points, the cancellation of his highly anticipated tour with Lady Gaga. This happened right after the infamous Taylor Swift VMA incident. You know, that shocking night when Kanye stormed the stage, interrupted her speech, and turned the entire show into one of the most talked about pop culture moments ever. That single act didn't just cause drama for a few weeks. It set off years of tension between him and Taylor. Sure, they tried patching things up at one point, but let's be honest, it was never going to fully heal. The damage was already done. That VMA moment became one of the first signs that controversy was going to shadow Kanye again and again, affecting not only his reputation but also the opportunities that came his way. Fast forward a bit, and in the documentary we see Kanye openly admitting to Kim that he had stopped taking his medication for months. He describes it as if the universe itself had given him a calling, almost framing his struggle as part of a bigger destiny. Throughout the film, he frequently circles back to his 2016 breakdown, the moment when he abruptly ended the St. Pablo tour and was hospitalized soon after. Interestingly, the hospitalization isn't shown directly on screen, but it lingers like a heavy presence over the entire documentary. Kanye himself keeps revisiting it, treating it almost like a major dividing line in his life, a point where everything started to change. One of the major themes in this documentary is how Kanye's struggles didn't just impact him personally, they also affected the people closest to him. The way the media constantly painted him, especially during those tough years, seemed to put a real strain on his relationships with his family. At the same time, it created this deep sense of mistrust toward both the media and the big industry figures around him. From Kanye's perspective, it felt like people were constantly twisting his story, and that frustration carried on for years. The film then shifts into another controversial chapter, Kanye's political awakening. Remember back in 2018 when he stepped out wearing that bright red Trump hat? The documentary revisits that exact moment, along with his infamous pro-Trump speech on Saturday Night Live. He claimed the SNL team had pressured him not to go out on stage with the hat, that they were trying to silence him. And during that same speech, he brought up some pretty heavy statements, like how every time there's a scandal involving a black figure, such as Bill Cosby, the media always expects a black comedian to be the one talking about it. That comment didn't sit well with everyone. SNL cast member Michael Che, for example, confronted Kanye afterward. Michael thought Kanye was targeting him personally with that line, though Kanye insisted it wasn't about him at all. Still, Michael pressed him, asking why Kanye would publicly call out the SNL cast like that when, according to him, they'd always shown him love. Michael pointed out how unfair it was to put them on blast on live TV, especially when they had no chance to defend themselves in that moment. Kanye's response showed just how tense things were. He claimed his real problem wasn't with Michael at all, but with the show itself, with the larger system it represented. The conversation escalated enough that a third person had to step in, calm them down, and even request the cameras to stop rolling. In the documentary, Kanye tries to explain what the hat actually symbolized for him. He says it wasn't really about Trump himself. It was about resisting control, about proving he wouldn't let others dictate what he could or couldn't do. But at the same time, he admits politics frightened him. He describes moments where he genuinely felt like his life could be in danger simply for wearing that hat or being associated with politics in such a public way. The documentary doesn't shy away from showing just how deep Kanye's fears went during this time. Even when he visited the White House, he reportedly told staff that he had to be let inside quickly because he genuinely believed his life was in danger. For him, simply wearing that red hat felt like carrying a target on his back. But the tension doesn't end there. The film also dives into one of the most emotional and painful parts of Kanye's story, the way he began pointing fingers at the Kardashian family for his struggles with mental health. At one point, Kris Jenner is seen completely breaking down in tears while confronting Kanye. She pleads with him, urging him to take his medication and focus on getting better. But Kanye's response is heartbreaking. He tells her he'd rather be dead than rely on medication. In that heated moment, he pushes her to admit that the Kardashian-Jenner family has played a role in his mental health struggles. According to Kanye, nobody in the family was willing to truly acknowledge how their actions and presence impacted his mental state. Kris, trying to comfort him, responds with honesty. She admits they did have some effect on him, but she also tries to shift the focus, reminding Kanye that what strangers say online shouldn't matter so much. What really counts, she insists, is the love and support of the people closest to him. She tells Kanye that she loves him deeply and expresses a wish for him to be whole again, to be perfect in her eyes, so that Kim could love him the way he longs to be loved. The film then transitions to a family trip to Uganda, and emotions remain heavy. Kim, visibly emotional, sits down with people close to Kanye as they all plead with him to see reason. They remind him that just a couple of years ago, he wasn't like this, and that he needs to listen to the people who care about him. Kim herself speaks up, trying to reach him. She tells Kanye that he has to learn how to accept being told no. She explains that even she, despite being who she is, gets told no all the time, and she doesn't lash out or lose control in response. It's a raw and very human moment, showing just how difficult it was for his loved ones to help him while he was fighting so many internal battles. After the Uganda trip, it looked like Kanye started stepping back from politics for a while. The paranoia was still there. Even during the trip, he seemed constantly on edge about his own safety, but things at least quieted down a little. He and Kim renewed their vows, and in that emotional moment, Kim promised to stand by his side. Around the same time, Kanye entered what many call his Sunday service era. He began presenting himself as a man reborn, more spiritual, more grounded in faith. But that calm didn't last forever. By 2020, Kanye returned to politics with an even bigger move, announcing that he was running for president. At the same time, he became fixated on building a new kind of world in Wyoming. He poured his energy into experimental Yeezy projects, sustainable living ideas, and even futuristic architectural designs. On the surface, it looked ambitious. But alongside these projects came a string of bizarre and controversial statements that once again stirred chaos online. Fans who had supported him for years began openly questioning whether they could still stand behind him. One of the most painful moments came when Kanye revealed publicly that he and Kim had once considered not having their daughter North. That statement crossed a line for Kim, and not long after, the couple filed for divorce, admitting that their marriage had simply reached a breaking point. The documentary also shines a light on Kanye's sense of invincibility during this era. He often carried himself as if he could say anything without facing consequences. He'd boast about how Adidas could never drop him because, in his mind, he was the reason the brand made billions. He truly seemed to believe he was too valuable to lose. But reality eventually caught up with him. Following his anti-Semitic remarks, Adidas did cut ties, and instead of reflecting or slowing down, Kanye doubled down. The most infamous example came with his White Lives Matter shirts, a move that shocked the public and revealed his refusal to acknowledge the very real harm his words were causing. By this point, his downfall in the industry was undeniable. Major players in entertainment, Live Nation, AEG, reportedly refused to book him for tours. Even the Sphere in Las Vegas, one of the biggest and most high-tech venues in the world, turned him down. From being one of the most powerful names in music and fashion, Kanye found himself completely isolated, with doors closing one after another. As the documentary unfolds, one of the most striking things is how Kanye struggles to even explain his own story. He constantly pushes back against the idea that his behavior should be labeled as bipolar or reduced to a mental health crisis. Over and over, he complains that the media only wants to box him into that narrative. To him, it feels limiting, unfair, and almost like an attack. Instead, Kanye reframes the conversation. Rather than admitting that his outbursts might be linked to his mental health, he insists they're misunderstood. He argues that when he's off his medication, he's actually more himself, more in tune with the universe, and more authentic. Sometimes he frames his actions as political, other times as spiritual, and at moments he even paints them as visionary. Anything, really, except the possibility of being seen as unstable or unwell. The film portrays a man desperate to create, desperate to be understood, yet also deeply trapped by his own actions. His need to control the narrative leaves little room for criticism, or even loving advice from the people closest to him. This inability to accept feedback or compromise is clearly shown as one of the things that ultimately came between him and Kim. And while the Kardashians are often at the center of their own controversies, viewers online have pointed out something undeniable. Kim, despite everything, stood by Kanye for years. Through the chaos, the scandals, and the breakdowns, she tried to support him. Whether you love her or hate her, the documentary makes one thing clear. Kim was there, holding on as long as she could, even when the world was turning its back on him. In the end, the documentary shows Kanye holding firm to one belief, that he is more authentic, more himself, when he's off his medication. He surrounds himself only with people who he feels truly understand his larger purpose on this earth, pushing away anyone who questions him or challenges his perspective. But for longtime fans, this has been heartbreaking to watch. People who once idolized him now admit they can't stand behind what he has become. Michael Che's words sum it up perfectly. He tried to tell Kanye that he was a fan, but that supporting his current actions was nearly impossible. And that's the conflict for so many. The admiration for his genius mixed with the pain of watching his downfall. By the closing moments of the film, Kanye appears almost resigned. It's as if he has accepted that he might lose everything: relationships, partnerships, even his legacy. But he's willing to risk it all just to live life his way. He acknowledges what he's lost, but somehow seems at peace with the cost. Still, that acceptance doesn't make his downfall any less tragic. So that's the story the new documentary paints about Kanye West. Now I want to hear from you guys. If you've watched the film, or even just caught clips from it online, what did you think? Do you feel sympathy for him, or do you think he's gone too far? Share your thoughts down below. I can't wait to read them. Thank you so much for watching. I love you all, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye, guys!